Hi friends, Allie here. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to crochet these little Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus appliques. These patterns are a part of a crochet advent calendar series I'm doing over the next few days. This project includes 25 Christmas and winter themed appliques, a tree wall hanging to hang all the appliques on, and a little pouch to hold all of the appliques when they're not hung up. So the idea is you hang the wall hanging up, have the appliques in the pouch, and starting December 1st, you pick one applique out of the pouch and hang it on the tree, and you do that every day until December 25th, so it's just a fun way to count down for Christmas. I had one as a kid and I loved it so much, so I made this one for my daughter, and I think it will be something she looks forward to every year. So if you want to follow along with the Advent Calendar series, I'll be putting all of those videos into a playlist here on my channel over the next few days, and all of the patterns will be available for free on my blog, theturtledrunk.com as well. Or if you'd like to buy the PDF bundle, which includes the written instructions for all 27 of the Advent Calendar patterns, you can find that in my Etsy shop and on Ravelry. I will link to all of those places in the description box down below. But you can also just make these appliques by themselves. You can sew them onto any project or add a hanging loop and use it as a decoration. Now if you're ready to get started, let's head over to our supply list and let's get making. For these patterns, we'll be using medium 4-weight yarn. You'll need a skin color. I'll be using taupe, and you'll need 5 yards of that. You'll need about 7 yards of white yarn and 3 yards of red yarn. Optional supplies are red embroidery thread for Mrs. Claus's smile. That will make for a thinner smile. If you want a thicker smile, you can just use the red yarn. You'll also need black embroidery thread if you want to add eyelashes to Mrs. Claus. You'll also need a 3.75 millimeter or F hook, scissors, a yarn needle, and 4 6-millimeter safety eyes. We're going to start by making Santa's face and head, and we're going to make one of these. So with our skin color, we're going to make a magic circle and chain 1. Then working inside of the circle, we are going to work 8 half double crochets. To half double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook into the circle, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on your hook. After working all 8 of your half double crochets, we're going to pull that short strand tight to close up the hole in the center. And then we're going to join to the top of the first half double crochet with a slip stitch. And then chain 1. Now for round 2, we're going to be working 2 half double crochets in the first 5 stitches. And just to note, the chain 1 at the beginning of the round does not count as a stitch. So work those first 2 half double crochets into the same stitch that we joined to, and then we're going to work 2 half double crochets in each of the first 5 stitches. And then when we reach that last half double crochet, we're going to change colors. So we're going to start the half double crochet as normal. So yarn over, insert your hook into that stitch, pull up a loop. But before doing that final pull through, we're going to drop our current color and we're going to pick up our white yarn. And then we're going to do our final pull through with the white yarn so that we're ready to use it for the next stitch. So in the last 3 stitches, we are just going to work 2 half double crochets in each of the next 3 stitches. At the end of the round, you should have a total of 16 stitches. We're going to join to the top of the first stitch with a slip stitch and then chain 1. And now we are going to work on the beard. So that bottom part is Santa's beard. So now we're going to turn, working back into our white stitches. So in that first stitch, we're going to work 1 single crochet. Then in the next stitch, we are going to half double crochet, chain 1, and then half double crochet again into the same stitch. And then we're going to repeat that 2 more times. So single crochet into the next stitch, then into the next stitch, half double crochet, chain 1, half double crochet. Then 1 more time, single crochet into the next stitch, then into the next stitch, half double crochet, chain 1, half double crochet. So there we have Santa's beard, and now we're going to work up the rest of the way around his head for his hair. So in the next stitch, we're going to work 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets into the next stitch. And then we're just going to repeat those 2 steps all the way around his head. So 1 single crochet in the next stitch, 2 single crochets in the next stitch. We're going to repeat that for a total of 5 times, or until we reach the other side of the beard. When I reach the end, I'm going to join to the first stitch with a slip stitch. And at the end of round 3, you should have a total of 27 stitches around. That is including the chain ones that were in between the half double crochet stitches. So now we can cut off our white yarn and our skin color yarn. You can weave in those ends on the back side. And then I'm going to move on to making Santa's hat. For Santa's hat, we're going to start with our red yarn and start with a slip knot on our hook, and then we're going to chain 5. For row 1, we're going to double crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook. To double crochet, you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the next chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. In the next chain, we're going to work a half double crochet. And then into the last chain, we are going to work 3 single crochets. Then chain 3, then slip stitch into the 2nd chain from the hook, single crochet into the next chain, and then single crochet back into the base, so into the same chain that we had worked the 3 single crochets into. So you can see that kind of created a hook at the top of our hat. So that's going to be the tip of our hat. Now we're working on the opposite side of our foundation chain from the beginning. We're going to half double crochet into the next stitch and then double crochet into the last stitch. So here's what our hat is looking like so far. So we are at the bottom of the hat. There is the top of the hat. Now we're going to be working across the bottom of the hat. And then we're going to add the brim on. So keeping our red yarn attached, we're going to be working across the bottom here. So we're going to work 2 single crochets into the edge of that last double crochet that we worked. So 2 single crochets right into the edge of that stitch. Then we're going to work 2 single crochets into the center stitch, and then 2 single crochets into that next stitch. So that's going to be the chain 2 from the very beginning of our hat. So we're going to work 2 single crochets there. So we have a total of 6 single crochets across the bottom. On this last single crochet, we're going to change colors. So I'm going to start it as normal, but before doing that final pull through, I'm going to drop my red yarn and pick up my white yarn. So just finishing that final pull through with our white yarn. And then I'm going to chain 1 and turn. So we're working across the bottom again. We're going to work 2 single crochets into the first stitch. Then 1 single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. And then we're going to work 2 single crochets into the last stitch. Now we're going to tie off our white and red yarn, and you can weave those ends on at the back, and then we'll add a little pom-pom to the tip of the hat. So I'm going to attach my white yarn to the tip of the hat. So I'm just going to insert my hook through the 2 loops at the tip of the hat. And then I'm going to put a slip knot on my hook. Pull the loop through, and then I'm going to chain 3. Then I'm just going to join my yarn back into the same loops we originally joined to. And then you can cut off your yarn, leaving long enough tail that you can weave that in on the back. And then we have our little pom-pom, and then we're going to move on to making Santa's mustache. So now we're going to make Santa Claus's mustache, which is also the same pattern for Mrs. Claus's bangs. So you're going to want to make a total of 4 of these for both characters, or 2 for each. So with our white yarn, we're going to start with a slip knot on our hook, and we're going to chain 3. Then in the second chain from the hook, we're going to work 1 single crochet, and then slip stitch into the last chain. And then you can cut off your yarn, leaving about a 6-inch long tail, because we're going to use that tail end to sew it on to our characters. So there we have a 1 piece, so we're going to make another one for Santa, and then if you want to make 2 more for Mrs. Claus's bangs, you can do that now as well. So now we're ready to put Santa all together. I grabbed 2 safety eyes, then you'll also need the hat, the face/head, and the 2 pieces of the mustache. So we can sew in the short tail ends of the mustache pieces on the back of it. We won't be using that. We'll use the longer strands to sew it to Santa's face. So we're going to attach those pieces just above the beard, just like so that they're centered like that. And then I'm going to add the eyes between rounds 1 and 2, about 3 stitches apart, and then I will sew the hat to the top of the head. So I've sewn the mustache on, and now I'm going to place the eyes. So I'm going to place them right above the mustache. It's going to be between rounds 1 and 2, and about 3 stitches apart. You just want them to be even. And I'm going to place them a bit lower, closer to the mustache, so that there's room to sew the hat above them without covering them. So when using safety eyes, it's best to find where you want to place both of them before adding the backings, because once you add the backings on, it's near impossible to get them off. So make sure you have both of them exactly where you want them before you add the backings. So this is where I'm going to place mine. I'm going to put my backings on, and then we just have to sew on the hat. So I'm going to use some white yarn and just sew the hat to the top of the head, just above the eyes, just like so. So I'm going to sew this on, and then we can move on to adding a hanging loop. So I just finished sewing the hat to Santa's head. So this is what it's looking like so far. So if you're just using this as a regular applique, you're all done. But if you want to add a hanging loop, I'm just gonna cut a strand of white yarn. Feel free to use any color you want, or if you even want to use a different material like a ribbon or a different type of string, feel free to do so. But for all of my appliques, I'm going to use my white yarn. And I cut a strand that is about 6 inches long. That's longer than I need it to be, but I wanted to give myself enough extra just in case. So I'm gonna loop it through the top few stitches of the hat. And then I want my hanging loop to be 1 inch tall, so then I will create a knot at about the 1 inch mark and then tie it up and cut off the excess. I did end up making this one a little bit longer, so I did go back and redo it. So this was a little bit longer than I wanted to, but you just want to make sure that all of your appliques are the same length, so whatever length you want to do. This ended up being about 1.5 inches, so I ended up going back and making about 1 inch. But there we have our Santa, so let's move on to Mrs. Claus. So now we're going to work on Mrs. Claus's face/head. So we're going to make one of these with skin color. We are going to do a magic circle and chain 1. Then for round 1, we're going to be working inside the circle. We're going to work 8 half double crochets. After working our last half double crochet, you can take that short tail end there and pull it tight to close up the hole in the center. Then we're going to join with a slip stitch to the first half double crochet. Then chain 1. At the end of round 1, you should have a total of 8 stitches. For round 2, we're going to be working 2 half double crochets into each stitch around. When we reach the end on the last half double crochet, we're going to change to white. I'm just coming up to the last half double crochet, so I'm going to start it as normal, but before doing that final pull through, I'm going to drop my current color, pick up my white yarn, and do the final pull through with my white yarn. Then I'm going to join to the top of the first half double crochet of the round with a slip stitch, and then chain 1. At the end of round 2, you should have a total of 16 stitches around. Now we're on to round 3. For round 3, we're going to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch, 2 single crochets into the second stitch, and 1 single crochet into the third stitch. Into the fourth stitch, we're going to slip stitch, chain 1, then work 2 half double crochets all into that same stitch, then chain 1 and slip stitch back into the same stitch. So there we just created the bun of Mrs. Claus's hair, so right in the center there. We're going to single crochet into the next stitch, then 2 single crochets into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, and then slip stitch into the next stitch. So there we created Mrs. Claus's hair. So we can cut off our white yarn and our skin color yarn. You can weave those in on the back. And then we are going to make 2 more bang pieces if you didn't do that when you were doing Santa's mustache. So you can make 2 of those if you haven't done so yet. If you have already made them, then we're going to attach those now. So we are going to attach those right under Mrs. Claus's bun that we made in her hair. So right in the center there, we're going to attach both those pieces, kind of pointing down and out. Just like so. So I'm going to sew those 2 pieces on now. So I have the bang sewed on, and now I'm going to place the safety eyes. So I'm gonna add eyelashes first, but I wanna make sure I know where the eyes are gonna go. Like I said when we were doing Santa, once you get the backings on the safety eyes on, you can't get them off. So you really wanna make sure you have the placement before you finalize anything. So I'm gonna figure out where I want the eyes first. I'm gonna try and place them in the same spot I did Santa's. So between rounds 1 and 2, and then about 3 stitches apart. So I'm going to figure out where I want these first, and then I'm going to add the eyelashes underneath of them. So figure out where you want the eyes, and then I'm going to take black embroidery thread and my needle, and I'm going to go through the back to the front and just sew that through about 1 stitch up, and I'm going to make 3 little lines at the top of where the eye is going to go. Sorry, my camera is a little bit out of focus here. But it should look something like that, and then you can place your eye back where it belongs so you can see the little eyelashes there. So I'm just going to repeat it on the other side. So it should look something like this. Now I'm going to add a bow to Mrs. Claus's hair. So I'm just going to cut a strand of yarn that's about 4 to 6 inches long. And then using my needle, I'm going to thread that through, working around the 2 half double crochet stitches that we worked for her bun. So the top of her hair right there. Just going to strand that yarn through so that the 2 ends are going to meet at the front. And then I'm just going to tie that into a little bow, and then you can cut off any excess yarn. So you can make the bow as big as you want and then just cut off the extra. So I'm going to just tie those 2 ends together and then make a little bow. This is where it helps to cut the yarn extra long so that it's easier to tie, and then you can pull the 2 strands tighter to make the bows smaller, just like so. Making sure it's nice and tight and secure. And once you have it just how you want it, you can just cut those little strands shorter. And now the final step is adding a little smile. So if you have red embroidery thread, you can use that. But actually with my yarn, all I did is I took a strand of my red yarn and I was able to peel it apart. So I just took one of the strands. You can use a full piece of yarn if you want. I thought that was a little bit too thick for my liking. So I just peeled off a strand of this red yarn to make it a little bit thinner. So I'm just going to take my needle and thread this through, making a little smile centered under the eyes. So I'm going to go in through the back under her right eye. And then down to the center between the eyes. So go across and center between the eyes and then down a little bit. And then I'm going to go up through under her other eye and then back through the center again. And there we have our little smile. You can tie that off on the back and add a hanging loop to Mrs. Claus. And there we have our Santa and Mrs. Claus appliques. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed these tutorials. I'll be posting more tutorials for the Advent Calendar series over the next few days, so keep an eye out for those. You can find all the ones that are already up in the Advent Calendar playlist here on my YouTube channel. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.